Let's kick things off with some vehicles you could buy with a 100k budget, starting with the LG RH8, which you could purchase for $95,000. It has 118 mile per hour top speed. If you were to max it out, it'll cost you about $318,000, and it's a pretty great starter car. Also, the Shafter V12, you could purchase it for 116 grand, 124 mile per hour top speed. It'll cost you about 315 grand to max out, and it's pretty sweet and fast. Next, we got the Hakucho, which you could grab for 82 grand with 134 mile per hour top speed, and it'll cost you about 109,000 bucks to max it out. It's great at doing wheelies, it's awesome in races, and it's an all-around good vehicle. We then have the Brigade 6x6, which you can get for free after completing all the first dose missions. It's an absolute beast. It can take 48 homing missiles, 25 tank rounds, and 115 explosive bullets. Plus, it's a mobile acid lab, and it's super fun to ram cars with it. Now let's talk $200,000 budget, starting with the Huntley S, which you can get for $195,000. It has a 108 mile per hour top speed, and it'll cost you $222,000 to max out. It's honestly a beautiful, cheap, luxurious SUV. Moving over to the Baller LE, which you can grab for $149,000 with a 108 mile per hour top speed as well. It'll cost you a total of $263,000 to max out, and once again, just a really nice, cheaper, luxurious SUV. And then we have the Rumpo Custom, which you can grab for $130,000 with a 98 mile per hour top speed. It'll cost you about $263,000 to max this thing out, and it is literally the perfect heist van, and it comes at a very cheap price. Now let's talk about $400,000 budgets, starting off with the Camacho, which you can grab for $345,000 bucks with a 116 mile per hour top speed, and it'll also cost you about $381,000 to max this thing out. Outstanding off-road vehicle with tons of different customizations. We also got the Shafter V12 Armored, which you can grab for $325,000 with a 123 mile per hour top speed, and it'll cost you about $149,000 to max this thing out. It's pretty much the exact same as the regular Shafter V12, but this thing has armor, and its windows are also a bit more bullet resistant. You could also grab a lowrider like the Moonbeam Custom, which you could get for $402,000 with a 102 mile per hour top speed, but it'll cost you about $780,000 to max out, which is a lot of money, but it's still nice to have a lowrider for a fairly cheap price. We then move over to the $600,000 budgets, starting off with the Tauros, which you could purchase for $498,000 with a 127 mile per hour top speed, and it'll cost you about $402,000 to max out. This thing is amazing, and it's also one of the best SUVs you could buy in the game when it comes to racing. We then have the Gauntlet Classic, which you could purchase for $461,000 with a 109 mile per hour top speed, and it'll cost you $395,000 to max out, but in reality, you really don't need to max it out. I just tossed some nice wheels on there, painted it black, and tossed a little spoiler on there, and look at how stunning this thing looks. Hands down, one of the most beautiful cars in the entire game. We then have the Blista Canja, which you could purchase for $435,000 with a 109 mile per hour top speed, and it'll cost you $476,000 to max this thing out. Definitely the nicest compact vehicle we have in GTA 5, and honestly, it's got a ton of awesome customizations, and it's really fun to drive around. We then move over to $750,000 budgets, starting off with the Turismo Classic, which you could purchase for $705,000 with a 120 mile per hour top speed, 150 mile per hour top speed with HSW mods, and it'll cost you $505,000 to max this thing out, and it'll cost you $897,000 to put the HSW upgrade on. It's literally my favorite Ferrari of all time, and in GTA 5, it's pretty awesome. We then have the Gauntlet Hellfire, which you could purchase for $745,000 with a 125 mile per hour top speed, and it'll cost you $378,000 to max out. It's a pretty beautiful car. I feel like Rockstar could have made the front end look a bit nicer, but it's a freaking Hellcat, and it looks stunning. We then have the 8F Drafter, which you could purchase for $718,000 with a 117 mile per hour top speed, and it'll cost you $382,000 to max this thing out. Once again, beautiful car. May not be the best for racing since its top speed isn't the highest, but it looks stunning, and it also sounds amazing. Now you got $1 million to your name. Why not consider purchasing the 190Z for $900,000, and it has a 109 mile per hour top speed, and it'll cost you about $437,000 to max out. This thing is a beautiful car, and before Rockstar started releasing a bunch of tuner cars and stuff like that, this used to be one of the most highly customizable vehicles in GTA Online. I just wish we could put wide body kits on and the wheels would line up, but sadly Rockstar doesn't want us to do that. But the car itself is still pretty sick. Also consider the Hakucho Drag for $976,000. You can get a bike that goes 126 miles per hour, but if you put HSW mods on it, it'll go 157 miles per hour. It'll cost you $441,000 to max this thing out, and it'll cost you $1.4 million to upgrade it to the HSW version. This bike will literally make you money if you do time trials with it, and if you do it on PS5 or Xbox Series X, the HSW time trial will make you even more money. Literally the perfect bike in the game for time trials. Also consider the LG Retro Custom. For $999,000, you can get a beautiful car that can go 115 miles per hour and cost you about $701,000 to max out. Literally one of my favorite Benny's vehicles in the game. I absolutely love this thing. I know I say favorite a lot because there's a lot of cars in this game that are awesome. This thing sounds beautiful, looks beautiful, and has tons of awesome mods. Now you have a $1.5 million budget. Consider grabbing the Jugular for $1.2 million, or get the trade price and get it for $918,000. It'll go 126 miles per hour, and it'll cost you $368,000 to max this thing out. It is the perfect sports car for racing because it's fast, and it's also one of the best cars to take off-road in the sports category. You'll absolutely destroy people with this car, because I have in the past. You could also grab the Shaligen GT for $1.3 million with a 125 mile per hour top speed, and it'll cost you $396,000 to max this thing out. Rockstar did an outstanding job at creating this car. It looks stunning, it handles really well, and that's pretty much all I gotta say about it. It is awesome. And you also have to get the Night Shark for $1,245,000. This thing has a 104 mile per hour top speed. It'll cost you $340,000 to max out. It can also withstand 20 homing missiles or 9 RPGs as long as you're sitting inside the vehicle. The way things are in GTA Online right now, with all the people running around with oppressors, having a vehicle like this will definitely benefit you. We're now moving over to the $2 million budgets. Why not start things off with the Draugr? This thing is an absolute beast that you can get for $1.8 million, or unlock the trade price and get it for $1.4 million. It has a 112 mile per hour top speed. It'll cost you $360,000 to max this thing out. I've done tests before. This thing is now the best off-roading vehicle we have in GTA Online. I will leave a link down below in the description if you guys want to check that out, but this thing is an absolute beast. You could also consider purchasing the Itali GTO for $1.9 million with a 127 mile per hour top speed, and it'll cost you $392,000 to max this thing out. It is my go-to car for racing in the sports category. I really think this thing should actually be a supercar, but for some reason, Rockstar wanted to make it a sports car in GTA Online. It is way too overpowered and the perfect car to race with. You could also grab the Vigero ZX for $1,947,000 with 125 mile per hour top speed, and if you put HSW mods on it, it'll hit about 157 miles per hour. It'll cost you $545,000 to max this thing out, and it'll also cost you about $550,000 to put the HSW mods on. This thing looks absolutely stunning and is one of the fastest cars in the game with HSW upgrades. And if you want a plane, grab the Nimbus for $1,900,000. It can go 165 miles per hour. You could paint it gold. It has champagne and cigars inside of it, and it is also more than 5 times cheaper than the Luxor Deluxe, which offers the exact same things as this, except it looks a bit older and it's a lot more expensive. So if you're looking for a private jet, this is the one to buy. We now move over to a $2.5 million budget. Starting things off is going to be the Buffalo STX. You can grab it for $2.1 million or unlock the trade price and get it for $1.6 million. It'll go 126 miles per hour. It'll cost you $1,300,000 to max out, but it can also withstand 12 homing missiles or 4 RPGs while you're inside the vehicle. Plus, it looks absolutely stunning and has a lot of cool customizations, including Amani tech. You could also purchase the brand new Entity MT for $2,355,000. It'll go 131 miles per hour normally, but with HSW mods, it'll hit 150. It'll cost you $396,000 to max this thing out, and if you want to put the HSW conversion on, it'll cost you $850,000. It's absolutely stunning, and it's extremely fast. It's an all-around great supercar. You could also consider purchasing the Sparrow for $1,815,000. It'll go 168 miles per hour and it'll cost you $357,000 to max this thing out. It's perfect for doing preps for the Cayo Perico heist, and it's better than the Buzzard Attack Chopper in pretty much every way. You guys want to see that video? The link is also down below. And you can't forget the good old Kosatka, which you could purchase for $2.2 million million with a 41 mile per hour top speed. It allows you to start the Cal Perico heist, and it's the only way you're going to be able to purchase the Sparrow. Highly recommend that you get it, because if you do, you'll be making a ton of money. Now let's talk $3 million budgets, starting off with the Progen Emrys for $2,750,000. This thing will go 127 miles per hour and cost you $352,000 to max out. It is one of my go-to supercars for racing, and that's all I have to say. It is phenomenal, and you should definitely purchase it if you want to do some supercar races. You could also consider purchasing the Torero XO for $2,890,000. This thing will go 131 miles per hour and cost you $425,000 to max out. Once again, outstanding supercar, super fast, and has tons of incredible modifications. It is also the third most customizable supercar in the game. You guys want to hear more about customizations? I will leave a link down below to some videos on the cars with the most customizations. We also have the Krieger for $2,875,000. This thing will go 127 miles per hour, and it'll cost you $339,000 to max out. This is also one of my go-to supercars for racing. Kind of swap between this and the Emrys. If you want a car that's great in races, the Krieger is definitely one of the cars to grab. Moving over to a $3.5 million budget, we're going to start things off with the BR8 for $3.4 million. You can get a beautiful car that'll go about 122 miles per hour. It'll also cost you about $453,000 to max out, and in my opinion, it is the best Indy car that we have in GTA Online, and also the one that looks the nicest. You could also purchase the weaponized Ignis for $3,245,000. It'll go 124 miles per hour. With HSW mods, though, it'll hit about 146. It'll cost you $533,000 to max it out, and about $500,000 for the HSW conversion. Sadly, I couldn't get it on PC because of Rockstar, but it is still a great vehicle, and I love the way that turret works on it. You could also buy the Avenger for $3,450,000. It'll go 178 miles per hour and cost you about $619,000 to max this thing out. It is an outstanding vehicle. It is super strong, super fast. Like I said, it can literally outrun homing missiles, which is very, very useful in GTA Online nowadays. Let's move up to a $4 million budget, starting things off with the Toreador for $3,660,000. It'll go 135 miles per hour on land and 60 miles per hour underwater as long as you're using that boost. It'll also cost you about $340,000 to max out. It's just a lot of fun to drive on land and in the water. Oh, and by the way, it can also shoot missiles. You could also purchase the Vigilante for $3,750,000 with a 147 mile per hour top speed. It'll also cost you about $435,000 to max this thing out. Once again, it can outrun Oppressor Mark II rockets / homing missiles, and it can also recharge that rocket boost in about 3 seconds. Plus, it can shoot missiles, and it's the freaking Batmobile. You have to purchase the Oppressor Mark II for either $3.8 million, but if you unlock the trade price, you can get it for $2.9 mil. It goes about 127 miles per hour, and it'll cost you about $508,000 to max this thing completely out. Super, super useful vehicle in GTA 5 to make you money, and it's also great for PvP and PvE, and I apologize for the clip just kind of sitting like this. Rockstar Editor glitches a lot. And don't forget about the good old Akula. You could purchase it for $3.7 million or unlock the trade price and get it for $2.7 million. It has a top speed of 157 miles per hour. It'll cost you $1,109,000 to max this thing out. You can also go off the radar indefinitely for as long as you want. It can shoot tons of missiles at a time, and it is also the strongest helicopter in the game. You want an attack chopper? This is the one to get. Now let's go over the last couple of vehicles here, starting off with the Pyro, which you can purchase for $4,455,000. That is a 222 mile per hour top speed, and it'll cost you $449,000 to max out. This thing is extremely fast. It looks pretty decent. It can outrun homing missiles, and it also has an infinite amount of homing missiles. It is the fastest vehicle in GTA Online. You could also grab the Deluxo for $4,700,000 or unlock the trade price and get it for $3.5 million. It has 127 mile per hour top speed. It can also fly, and it'll cost you $511,000 to max this thing out as well. It's really fun to do tricks with, fun to kill people with, and enemies as well. It's an all-around pretty great vehicle. And the most expensive vehicle on this list, the Laser, which you can get for $6,500,000 with a 195 mile per hour top speed. It is one of the best vehicles to use for dogfights and killing people in GTA 5. It has great agility, good top speed, but if you don't want to buy it, you can always find it at the military base if you don't want to spend $6.5 million. Well guys, those are some vehicles you can buy on a budget in GTA Online in 2023. You want to see another episode of this? Leave a like. Don't forget to check out some of the videos down below in the comments. With that said, I'll catch you guys in the next one.